Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. This is Bharat Srinivasaraghavan, the Chief Delivery Officer at Cyrax. And with me, I have Anamika Patil, the Practice Head for Technical Services. So we have a very interesting discussion for today's webinar. Before we go ahead, just want to do a quick check on the audio settings. If you can confirm we are audible, and then we can proceed. Can someone from the audience confirm if you are audible? Yeah, quite a few confirmations. Thank you so much. So the topic for today is human factors in cybersecurity, and we'll be focusing specifically on social engineering and insider threats. So Anamika, being the practice head for technical services and doing a lot of assessments around VAPT, phishing assessments, what do you think of the human factor when it comes to cybersecurity defense?
Okay. So human factor is often considered the weakest link in cybersecurity, right? While many organizations nowadays are heavily investing into cutting-edge technologies to make the infrastructure more secure, but still we find that human factor has always been the targeting attribute to hackers, right? So as you see the stats on the screen, 95% of the cyber attacks results from human error. 90% of cyber attacks starts from a simple phishing email, whereas 34% of the cyber attacks are totally accountable due to the insider threats.
Wow.
So, in fact, on some of the books, it's also mentioned, right? Like Secrets and Lies is one of the book which is there, which mentions if your product is secure, it doesn't necessarily imply that your process is also secure, right? So we had Kevin D. Metnick. Most of you might have heard his name. He was one of the world's most renowned hacker. He has quoted that he could easily get passwords and other sensitive information from companies, and he's accountable for also doing $1 million frauds across various corporate companies. And what he used to do is just talk, right? Just by asking someone and just by talking, he used to get these details, and that is very nicely depicted in a book called Art of Deception. Okay, so ask some questions to ourselves only, like how many times have you written your passwords on a mobile phone or on your book so that you should not forget it? Many times, right? Yeah. How many times you have reused the same password across different websites? We have done it.
I think if you do a quick poll, I think the answers will all be yes for this.
Yeah, we are all doing it. And how many times you have got an error from a web browser, right, saying that this site is not secure? How many times have you encountered a digital certificate error saying that, do not trust this communication? However, we are still proceeded, right? So there are many factors that, contribute to a human being the weakest link for hackers to break into a process.
That's very interesting. So typically, if you look at it, it falls to around social engineering and insider threats, and I think you touched upon both of them. So before we go into it further, let's just look at, take a step back and see what do these even mean, right? So social engineering, manipulation of individuals to divulge personal information, confidential information, proprietary information, which can then be used for fraudulent purposes. Insider threats, on the other hand, refer to, sabotage, theft, or leakage of information by persons within the organization. Now, this could be accidental or it could be intentional, right? And both of this form a crucial element in how the human factor is exploited for cybersecurity data breaches and attacks, right? So when you talk about social engineering attacks, there are different ways in how these is played out. So the most common one is phishing. I am sure everybody today is aware of it with the kind of emails that come in and the media coverage that is there. So phishing refers to sending deceptive emails or messages to users and trick them into sharing their credentials, credit card information, and any such thing that might be of importance for the hacker. A very targeted form of phishing is veiling, which is basically targeting senior executives or HNIs, high net worth individuals to lure them into sharing this sensitive information, which is probably high reward for the attackers. The other form of social engineering attacks are baiting, which is basically luring a user or a victim by promising them or enticing them some reward, usually in the form of some financial gains, and tricking them into sharing this information. And of course, you have tailgating, I think we are all guilty of tailgating, wherein when we go into our organization in our offices, we usually follow the person who's actually cleared the access for us. But in tailgating, which is the form of social engineering attack, this usually involves an unauthorized person following an authorized person without authentication into a restricted area, and that opens up its own can of worms. And finally, you have phishing, which is nothing but your voice phishing. So scammers or hackers use deceptive technologies, deep fake AI techniques to go ahead and impersonate people to lure you into sharing information or making you do financial transactions. I think the famous Netflix series Jamtara is proof of how big the scam is. And recently we've had incidents wherein people have been impersonating police officials and targeting people to make financial payments, and by threatening them that there is a blue dart courier that is there, and they have to be accountable for it. So these are the various types of engineering attacks, social engineering attacks that are prevalent today.
So talking more about insider attacks, now these type of attacks are very difficult to detect because these are majorly related to the behavior of a person inside your organization, correct? So as you see, there are three types of insider attacks: malicious, negligent, compromise. Malicious insiders are those employees who intentionally will exploit the access to the resource which they have and gain some potential harm to the organization for their own personal benefit. Negligent insiders can be those employees who, without any malicious intent, can perform a security breach or harmful incident, maybe due to lack of awareness, training, or any such security protocols. And compromised insider are those insiders who are quite innocent and like they are targeted by external attackers to gain confidential information or to gain credential from through an outside entities, right? So to quote a very classic example, we had a data breach which Tesla suffered in the year 2023, where an insider was responsible for publicly disclosing around 75,000 employees' records, which included their names, phone numbers, addresses, employment records, social security numbers. Also, some of the files about Tesla's complaints about the self-driving features, their promotional campaigns, all the details were given out to a media outlet.
That's quite revealing, in fact. So both social engineering attacks, and insider threats. What's the driving factor, and what's the one thing that drives this, and how are people manipulated? Can you throw some light on that?
Sure. So there are quite a lot of manipulation techniques, Bharat, that goes into this, but these are the four majorly driving factor which we are seeing nowadays, like exploitation of trust and authority, right? So attackers may try to impersonate themselves as a trusted figure or as someone who you would already know and try to gain some information by just talking to you, right? Or they might trick a sense of fear or urgency into you, so that you can act quickly without even thinking about it. So these are very popular techniques nowadays we are able to see. And then other is reciprocity, wherein attackers may offer you something of a high value or benefit, and the users in return will provide you some sensitive information. Same goes with social proof, where attackers may present fake testimonials or may create fake scenarios in order to convince you to reveal something which is very confidential.
So essentially, we are playing on the psychological factors related to humans. So either getting their trust, getting a sense of urgency, or establishing trust through fake testimonials or something. So making them act that they normally wouldn't otherwise do. Right? That's the crucial element. That's quite important. So can you throw some case studies that are there? Can you explain more about that?
So we have had quite a few case studies which are quite interesting. Many of you might know about NASA leaks, correct? So Edward Snowden was one of the NSA contractor who revealed the data publicly about their surveillance documents to the journalists. And he did this because he had a privileged account, he had an admin access to the accounts and the infrastructure within the company, and he was gathering and collating this data over months. Okay, and then another was a deep fake scam which occurred on a UK based company. where a sophisticated whaling attack was launched on the CEO of the company. So in this attack, obviously AI deepfake technology was used, wherein the CEO got a call from a person who, pretended to be the CEO of a parent company and tricked the CEO to transfer a huge amount to a supplier's account. And in this technique, the voice was actually a AI deepfake, which actually was so accurate and in terms of the tone, accuracy, and mimicking the exact voice of the German CEO.
Wow. So this is pretty much what we talked about as a whaling concept, and
Yeah.
even CEOs are not spared from this, and I'm sure that has had a very big impact on the company.
Correct. And then we may know about the Australian federal government phishing attack, where a wave of phishing emails were sent across to the recipient who were designed to, reveal some sensitive information. These emails actually looked like the official government email communications which comes across to the recipients. And these emails also had some links to fake websites, which will again resembling the government portals, wherein the users could key in their username, passwords, and that's how they gain access to the sensitive information. Now, all of these attacks typically call out the need for increased vigilance, increased verification process, increased MFA, and a step further on how we can actually, verify the identity of user before performing any type of crucial transaction or before revealing any kind of sensitive information, even to someone outside or even to someone within your organization.
Yeah, true. So what are some prevention and mitigation strategies that we can look at? So Anamika already spoke about a few of them as she was, summarizing the incidents and the case studies that were there. So typically start at access controls. So limiting access to sensitive information with the principle of, least privilege, monitoring your privileged access, reviewing them. Then implementing monitoring and auditing controls. So implementing technologies like SIM, SOAR, monitoring the network usage, the data usage across the organization is something that will help you identify if there are any such incidents that may happen. Then the crucial element, because we are talking about the human factor, is the user training and awareness. So user training is important. You need to train your users to identify, any possible threats, any phishing attempts, and how do they report them. So like Anamika mentioned, you can receive emails which are resembling the official communication, but there are ways and techniques to identify if it's actually an official communication or it is not, right? So user training is very important. Beyond that, you also have behavioral analytics. There are tools which help you identify if there are anomalies in the system, identify non-usual patterns, unusual patterns of working that may happen, right? And finally, when all goes to bust, you need a strong and effective incident response plan. So in case you do have a breach, in case you do have an attack, you should know what you have to do during an incident, right? Now, we said at the start of this webinar that about 95% of these attacks originate through a phishing email. So it becomes important to strengthen your email security systems. So anti-phishing tools and software like PhishMe or Mimecast will help you in this, because they help you scan your attachments, scan your emails for any malicious content, malicious URLs, and you can filter them out. And then, of course, email filtering and authentication systems like DMARC, which will help you verify the authenticity of the senders and, again, filter out any emails which you do not need in your environment. This could be phishing emails, spoofing emails, and all of that. Additionally, an organization can look at some of these measures to go ahead and improve their posture. So this could be phishing exercises, threat modeling, and red team, right? So phishing exercises, so you have done the best that you can do to train your employees and educate them. Doing phishing exercises can help you identify how well they've understood, and are they able to identify any patterns, are they able to identify suspicious links, and do they fall prey to such things. Accordingly, you can then train them better and use a system of carrot and stick to make sure that these measures are strictly followed. Then you have something called as threat modeling. So threat modeling helps you uncover threats that are applicable to a system or applications, and you can come up with mitigation strategies to proactively manage them. And finally, if you are looking at an org-wide landscape, you have something called red teaming. So you can simulate real-time attacks or real-world attacks on your entire IT landscape, be it the public infrastructure, applications, and it depends on how much you want to simulate a real-world attack. But you can trust your organization, test your organization's defenses, and what are the potential vulnerabilities and what you can do to fix them. So these are some additional measures that can help you improve your posture, starting from not just from the human element, but beyond that, going to the process and the technology aspect. So I think we've covered what we wanted to talk about in the webinar. Let's look at what questions do we have from the audience on this topic. So the team that is there on the call, feel free to start popping in your questions, and we'll start reading them and start answering them. So let's just scroll just 1 second. We're just going through the Q&A. Okay, so there's this question from Mike. What are some red flags that might indicate a user has fallen victim to a social engineering attack, and what would be the first step to recover and do damage control?
Yeah, so Mike, to answer your question, you'll have to look at certain patterns, right? Like suppose if a person has fallen into a social engineering attack, right? You can look into the behavioral pattern, like when is his last login, log out time? Is it after work hours? If it is post work hours, then that's a problem. And you should look at if that person is downloading some data, or what is the network traffic, right? So you can keep a track of all the user activity, like logging and monitoring, one of the mechanism, and analyze the behavior of that user and notice the patterns, and you will come to know if there is any behavioral anomalies. You will come to know.
Okay. Then we have a question from Riaz. How can organizations implement technologies and procedures to monitor and prevent insider threats, especially those that involve privileged users? A good question. So privileged users means they have higher privileges. You need to make sure that you have solutions like PAM or PIM, which will help you manage this process effectively. Doing rigorous periodic review, especially on the privileged users, will be important. Then you can look at solutions for behavioral analytics, which will identify if there are any anomalies, if there are any unusual patterns, like accessing files which are not typically accessed by that person, or activity which is outside of the normal working hours of that person. So these are some technologies and some processes which can help you identify if there are any insider threats or any patterns which may indicate that. Okay. Next question. How to prevent, Aishwarya has a question, how to prevent phishing emails when email gateway security is enabled, but I need to allow Gmail or Yahoo Mail? Oh my God, this is very specific. Anamika, you want to take that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So Aishwarya, you could specifically whitelist these domains, and there's a way you can whitelist it in the admin account, and also you can set the specific records like DMARC records, TKM record, SPF records, and also implement URL filtering, content filtering, and scanning of attachment. Like if there is anything malicious, that will be blocked right there.
Okay, just scrolling further. Okay. What role does Amit Sharma has a question? What role does psychology play in social engineering attacks? Okay, again, a good question. We did cover this briefly. So psychology plays a very crucial role. So I spoke about the cases where it was, the Blue Dart example, right? Wherein a person was impersonating a police officer, and, they had somebody on the call video throughout the day, and, made them transfer amount, various sums of amounts to, to a different account. So it plays a very crucial attack because they are manipulating a person to do something that they normally otherwise would not. And it's such an important factor wherein they're convinced that they shouldn't contact anybody, whether they're friends and family, lawyers, or anybody. And people who are educated, people who are lawyers, even they have fallen victim to such attacks. So it's a very important factor. They are playing on the fears of people to say that, something like this could happen to me. And only by being vigilant and keeping calm can you, actually understand if it's an actual thing that has happened or somebody, scamming. Okay. How many times have you successfully gained entry in a red team engagement using social engineering? That's a very interesting question from Ramesh. Anamika, you want to take that?
Yeah. So Suresh, it has happened a lot many times. In fact, if we go through our red teaming reports now also, we have encountered majority of the vulnerabilities are through the recon phase where, social engineering is carried out. We are using default credentials, we are using email IDs, which we already know or which we can, frame and put across. So there have been quite a few instances where there are just like admin 123 admin, these type of passwords have worked. We know that is not that usual, but there might be many domains which are decommissioned. There are many applications which are not in use but are still in public, and these type of applications typically are not under maintenance, and that's the reason why the default credential, default passwords are working, and that's typically a form of, again, social engineering.
Okay. Akhil has a question, which is, how has the evolution of technology, particularly social media and AI, changed the landscape of social engineering, and what new vulnerabilities have emerged as a result? So, again, social media, all of us are using social media, even, so it's not just a Facebook and Twitter, even LinkedIn right now constitutes a social media. And with the way things are, people post a lot of things on social media. So it's not just, putting up your birth date or, celebrating a milestone. There are a lot of other information that is shared. What kind of webinars you attend, what kind of events you attend, what are you a part of, right? So hackers are getting a lot of information just by crawling your web space and understanding what kind of a personality you are, and then they use this to get more information or make the kind of attack or make the kind of technique that you're doing. They're fine-tuning it to what you're doing. So if I have to say, they are customizing it to who you are as a person, and that makes it more successful, and that makes you more vulnerable. So you always need to be aware of the kind of information that you're posting on social media, whether it is really required to be there, and when, if at all, you face such a question, you need to be, calm and, look at, whether it is something that is actually there or it's something that somebody has crawled from information from the social space. Okay. We'll take one more question. How can organizations identify? No, I think we've tackled that already. Srila has a question. How can security teams balance the need for security controls with the need to maintain user productivity and morale? Oh, okay. So this is a typical question that we have, right? I mean, security, productivity, you have to balance, right? So while productivity is important, you want to enable people to be productive and deliver on the outcomes that they are responsible for. Security is equally important because you've delivered the outcome, but it's not secure. That means you're vulnerable to all kinds of attacks, and the very value of the outcome that you're achieving has been lost. So what is needed is to be proactive to ensure that what are your threats and how are you mitigating them, while allowing users the freedom to be productive and deliver what they need to. So that's the balance that you can look at. Be proactive. Reactive measures are specific to anything that happens. Proactively implement measures, whether it is monitoring, awareness, you do all of that, and then allow users the freedom to work on the things that they need to work on. Okay. Kadir has a question. Can you recommend some response strategies for when these attacks are successful? You want to take that?
Sure. So Kadir, yeah, I mean, see, one of the points which we spoke during our webinar also, you need to have a proper incident response plan. You need to have a proper backup when these kind of incidents are happening. You can restore the backup. That is one. Second, whatever compromised accounts are there, let's suppose someone has leaked their credential or accounts have been compromised, you can always go and reset them, and you can enhance your email security protocols going forward. You can launch some training awareness, some security trainings within your organization. You can also revamp your cybersecurity policies which are currently in place. Now, these are some of the proactive measures which organizations have taken and benefited, and we have seen the results in our assessments itself.
And when it comes to response, what you need to do is contain the impact and quickly come up with a plan to mitigate it. And then post that, your incident review is important so that these attacks are not repeating and any vulnerabilities or loopholes, whether it is in terms of awareness or process deficiencies or control failures, are addressed. Right? So I think that's I think all the questions that we had. I'm seeing some of the questions are repeated. So thank you all for joining this webinar. It was a very interesting and exciting discussion for us. We'll soon be back for another webinar with all of you, and hope to see you all again.